This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we have all along encouraged you to like and share them on social media and with all of your friends and neighbors, because it's time now for your not the average, everyday, run-of-the-mill conservative talk show. This is a little alternative programming to what you're used to hearing around here. But folks, independent insurance agent Rudy Howard comes your way each week at this time to present the African-American scene. And here he is right now on WPSL, Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Over the next couple weeks, I'll be pulling out my new business name, which is going to be Rudy's Health Insurance. So there'll be a change in my advertising. Rudy's Health Insurance, LLC. That's going to be the name of my business. Nothing else changed. The phone number doesn't change. I just did a limited liability corporation for the protection of myself and my family. So be aware of that. So when you see something, it's nothing different, just a different name. As I told some of you, I have accepted a position on the board of directors for the YMCA. And I was at our last YMCA board meeting, and Joy, I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, who's a recreational supervisor director for St. Lucie County, was making a statement that they are in desperate need of lifeguards. And it was my hope that I would get her on tonight so she could talk to me more about that. And they're willing to offset the costs of becoming a lifeguard. And I would just tell you, for those of you who have kids that are good swimmers, I became a lifeguard at 14. So that's a nice way for them to make some additional money being a lifeguard. So if you got a kid and you think they are a pretty good swimmer, they'll have to go through the test, but you can go through and they'll help you with the test to become a lifeguard. It's not terribly difficult if you're not afraid of the water. I went through it the first time without issue. That was many, many, many years ago, though. But anyway, I think it would be very good. I passed this information on to one of my frat brothers who has a son that is a fish. So hopefully he'll take advantage of it. I have two topics for tonight. The second one, I know I'm not going to get through, and I'm not going to attempt to get through. But my first topic was actually initiated because of a comment made by Jay last week. And after he made that comment, I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what, he's right. And his comment was, we hear this woke stuff all the time, and I bet most people don't even know what woke means. And I think he's right. So my topic number one is going to be, what is woke? Topic number two, which is the one we're not going to get through, I know. Reconciling one's faith and teachings of the Bible with our political views. Ooh, that's a heavy one. I found lots of research on that. That's why I know I'm not even going to try to finish all of this tonight. But let's deal with this woke thing. First of all, for those of you who keep hearing DeSantis yelling woke, and I am just so disgusted. I keep getting phone calls from my friends from New York, and they go, what is wrong with that governor you got down there? And I go, I don't know, but the only thing I can tell you is I didn't vote for him. He is, you may love him here, and there may be some parts of the country that loves him, but to many parts of the country, he is an embarrassment to me. First, let me tell you the definition of woke. Listen to this now. Woke means someone is informed, educated, and conscious of social justice issues. Wow, how derogatory is that? That's what woke means. Someone is informed, educated, and conscious of social issues, social justice issues. Is that a requirement to wipe that out? We don't want anybody to be conscious and informed and educated about social injustice issues. We don't want that. We don't want any of our people to be aware of that. Think about that for a second. I just gave you the definition. So tell me, why would you be opposed to somebody being woke? Why would you be opposed to somebody being woke? Now, this has turned into, now, first of all, let me tell you when the term woke first started. In the 1900s, woke first started in the 1900s regarding racial injustice movements. So the term woke became attached to racial injustice, injustice, racial injustice movements in the 1900s. This is 2023. This is hardly a new thing. You have been convinced it's new because it's another straw man to try to beat up Democrats. That's what it is. That's just what it is. Now it's a made up cultural issue. Come on, attack me if you will. That number is 340-1590. I defy you. I accept your phone calls. You tell me why woke is important when I have defined what it stands for. 340-1590. You tell me why that has become a central theme for conservatives and the Republican Party. It makes no sense. And you are being manipulated, just like you were about CRT. CRT and woke are the same thing, critical race theory. Now, I have to tell you, the first time I heard about CRT was when I was still friends with this conservative guy I know who no longer speaks to me and I to him. And he said to me, "What about CRT?" I have to tell you, I never even heard of the damn term. And I'm a college-educated man. I'd never heard of CRT. I didn't know what the hell CRT was. But why? Now let's talk about that. Let me show you why. CRT was a theory created by the Derek Bell the Harvard law professor in the 1970s. Do you hear that? 1970s. And in 2021, it emerges as a mainstream topic. And I'm going to tell you more about why that comes about. But 1970s, now all of a sudden, CRT is a horrible thing that we must protect our kids from. Let me give you another one. Drag shows. Do you know how long drag shows been around? Drag shows been around since the 1920s. They've been around for more than 100 years. I don't think there's been a rash of gay people created from going to see drag shows. Now, all of a sudden, and this all has a link now, all of a sudden now, drag shows are this horrible thing that's going to corrupt the public at large and corrupt our children. So what about the last 100 years? And now those shows are under attack. Now, if you, I don't expect most of you are not going to agree with me because you're of the conservative ilk. But if you are an intelligent conservative, think about what I just said. You got drag shows that's been around since the 1920s. The critical race theory, which was originally developed as a philosophical thought process applied for kids in graduate and law school.
We don't want anybody to mix up critical race theory with the things that we talk about when it comes to Black History Month.
Right.
There's a fine line there too, but it's not the same thing for those who would want to find an area they'd want to pin you to the wall about with this.
Well, I welcome that because what DeSantis has done is he has expanded the critical race theory thing to attack any books that cast any dispersion on white folks about things they've done in the past. That they see as divisive, and I don't see it as divisive. And I'm going to tell you why I don't see it as divisive. In Germany, it is required learning to learn about Hitler. Swatch stickers, any kind of paraphernalia in recognition of that dark period in history in Germany is forbidden. But they make the kids learn about it.
Well, if we don't remember history, if we forget history, we're bound to make the same mistakes over and over again.
That's the exact point, Cliff. That is the exact point. That's why we have to learn. So you think you're protecting your kids. First of all, your kids are a lot tougher than you think they are. That's for sure. And they learn all kinds of stuff that you don't want them to learn, but they will and do anyway. But here's a point of positive construction, because listen, I told you last week, and I hope some of you went out to find it. The 1619 Project is a documentary on Hulu. And there was a lot of controversy about the 1619 Project, which ties in with the CRT business. And she documents her positions on everything throughout the documentary. And even the area where she was roundly criticized regarding the American Revolution, she interviewed the historian who brought that information to her attention. So if you go and watch it, it is worthwhile to watch because you will learn some things. And I consider myself a amateur, very amateur historian, and there was things coming up there that I had never heard of. So it behoove you to go and watch it and educate yourself. And I could think of nothing better to educate your young adult kids than 1619 Project. It would be very, very beneficial to them. But the point that I'm trying to make here is what you are being manipulated in cultural issues, and that's because on the mainstream issues, conservatives are losing. The vast majority of America is in agreement on issues that conservatives oppose. We'll get into this more later, but just take, for example, guns. There's like a 90% agreement that there needs to be something done about guns. You can't get this country to agree on anything in plurality to that extent. But we have a very, very large agreement that there needs to be something done about guns, and especially assault rifles. Conservatives on the wrong side of that issue. That issue could be very destructive to them. As we continue to see murders from this weapon that was designed to be a weapon of war for killing people. The other thing, while it has been their lifelong dream to overturn Roe v. Wade, more than 58% of the country thinks it's the wrong position. And I know Brian Longworth was doing a happy dance when that happened, but the vast majority of Americans do not agree. So now what's left? This is where I'm leading you to. This woke CRT thing is creating cultural issues that divide us and gives them a wedge issue to sell to you in order to get your votes. It is a means of interpreting, of attacking Democrats, and because you will find that maybe something that you're comfortable with, you will consider voting for them even though they don't support the issues that most of you have said are important to them. So that's woke. And I'm going to give you that definition one more time. And I would like somebody to call me up and tell me what is wrong with this. It means someone is informed, educated, and conscious of social justice issues. Okay, and we have Brian on line one. Yes, Brian. Yes, Brian. Brian? Did we lose him, Cliff? I guess Brian hung up. Okay, Brian, call back.
Huh?
He's there. Sorry about that, Rudy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, CRT, I don't have a problem with actually, let me back up. Woke. The definition of woke. The issue that I have with woke is it is limited. And what it is to me, it's portrayed as problems stemming from conservatives, white conservatives, right?
That's not what woke is, Brian, but okay, go ahead.
In my opinion now.
Okay, go ahead.
Talk about the total picture. For example, slavery. That's one of the biggest hot topics, right? But slavery is always presented as something that white people did to black people. It's never really addressed as far as the fact that, wait a minute, time out. How did it start? It started with the Africans who were selling and trading other Africans that they had captured to Europeans for weapons and money and other things. So this is something that I always turn over in my mind. What if the African chiefs who had defeated other Africans in battle or whatever, what if they had said no to the Europeans? No, we're not going to give you other Africans. You can get out of here with that. No, we're not going to do that. Obviously, that didn't happen. So Africans themselves are very, very culpable for the transatlantic slave trade. That's the first thing that I always turn over in my mind. Then the second thing is there were black slave owners and there were also black slave hunters. But this is something that you never hear about. You only hear about it described as, oh, the Europeans and the white man were slave owners and all that stuff. Yes, that's a fact that everybody knows, but that's the only thing that's ever harped on. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just white people that was doing it. Black people were guilty as well. Very instrumental in the transatlantic slave trade, as a matter of fact. But that's, you know, and we talk about woke. If I call myself woke, how am I only going to focus on what the white man did, but totally ignore what the black man did?
Okay.
Also, me as a black man, I am more in danger of my life from other black men here in the United States. Not the white man, but that's never really addressed. And as a matter of fact, I've even been told to you know, don't talk about black on black violence, quote unquote black on black violence. People get mad when you bring up what's going on in these communities of color. When you bring that up, it's like, oh no, you don't want to talk about that. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
You'll never hear me say that on this show. You're perfectly you're perfectly obliged to talk about it here on my show. But now
that's great.
My retort.
Yeah.
Here's what you hear: black on black crime, and you say 90% of all crime against black people is from other black people. Correct? Is that your point?
Yeah.
Okay. 80% of all crimes against white people is from other white people. Is that an issue that needs to be discussed?
Is it an issue that needs to be discussed?
Yeah, 80% of all crimes on white people are for other white people.
Uh-huh.
Did you know that?
Yes, I know that.
Okay, so when people say black on black crime, they're painting it like this nefarious picture and improper character of black people as a whole. And that's what black people object to. Don't black people don't object to the fact. The fact is the fact. But people
The thing is, Rudy,
people object to the mischaracterization of black people as a whole.
but see, the issue with that is, for me personally, now again, I'm not talking for everyone else. I'm just talking about me personally. The issue that I have is, if I am killing other black people and other black people are getting killed by other black people at a higher rate than anyone else, why am I highlighting the fact that we are killed by other than black people, non-black people?
Well,
So
I
my
don't
point
think
is,
I,
my point is if other black men are killing black men at a higher rate, why are we not focusing more on that? Why do we point over to the white man so much? Does it deserve attention? Of course it does. And yes, I'm conservative, but I'm not one of these conservatives that doubts racism and all. Yes, racism is real. Yes, it exists. Yes, it negatively impacts the lives of black people. Of course it does. I will never deny that. But in my mind, it is downplayed the fact that, hey, we are shooting ourselves in our own foot. That we complain about what other people are doing to us.
Brian, I gotta let you go. I got 2 calls waiting, but thank you.
All right.
Please.
Hey, thanks for the time, Rudy.
Okay, please call again. Okay, Jay and then Steve. Jay.
Hello, Rudy.
Yeah.
Did you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Okay, very good. I'm doing great. With the conversation, it seems like it's getting a little heated, but that's good. It's always good to talk about it so people understand what woke means. And what I wanted to say is that when I think about what's going on now, and a play that I saw when I was a very young son, my mother took me to a Broadway play. It was called A Raisin in the Sun.
Oh, I saw it.
And the author was a black woman that wrote a book about this. It was called Lorraine Hansberry. It became very popular novel. And Raisin in the Sun won award there on Broadway for one of the best plays. I think it was in 1950 or 51, somewhere around that time range. And it played for a long time. The movie, sometimes they bring the movie back now. But I think a lot of people need to see that because a lot of them are in a little. I think they're kind of like living in. They don't realize what's really going on in this country, and there's people in this country in politics want to turn the clock back. A Raisin in the Sun was about housing discrimination, not only to that black family that wanted to move into a house out Long Island and was racially refused, and they had to jump through hoops, but GIs that came back, black soldiers, my uncle was one of them, that came back from World War II, and the GI a builder in Levittstown, Long Island, built a tract of homes for the GIs where they didn't have to pay a down payment, and it was about 1,000 homes for them.
Oh, Levittown.
So who was excluded from that for the last gentleman? Who was excluded from living in Levittstown, and is still on the books today? Black GIs, black soldiers that fought in Germany. Some of them were captured and released as prisoners of war. A friend of mine that was like that, he passed away. He used to live here in Port St. Lucie. He was a prisoner of war in Germany. Those are the guys that this is an untold story. This is what DeSantis he would never talk about all of this because he knows he went to Harvard. He understands what this country is about and what you're talking about. It's not about trying to appease white people. They don't need no appeasement. They think that they're coming out of their bag now. They think they're better than everybody that's of color. So we don't have to pretend what's going on. We just have to correct the condition. Thanks a lot, Rudy. I appreciate you letting me talk.
Okay, Jay. Steve, how are you, sir?
Good, Rudy. How are you?
Okay.
This critical race theory, I have no problem with it, but I want it to be critical race history and tell the truth about what happened to not only the black people, but the American Indians and other people of color. but tell the truth. And that's exactly what the Republicans and Adolf D. Stupid did, our governor, is trying to do, is they're trying to rewrite history.
Yes.
And that's not going to work. I grew up, I'm 75 like you, and I grew up in a time when they actually did tell the truth. So they can't pave it over now. The secret's out. And people got to understand that this is what happened. We did it, take responsibility, and change it.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes, we do. Listen, I have developed a pretty good friendship with somebody who is native Indian. And her and I have talked, and she is a really wonderful person. And I understand some of the things that have happened to her people, which are horrendous. But listen to this. This one has really got me. I was with her not too long ago, and after DeSantis passed this last bill about immigration, her kids, who naturally are somewhat tan, went to school, and one of the kids in the class said, "You know they're getting ready to kick you out." And she said her daughter looked at him and said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, they're kicking out all the Mexicans." And she said, "I'm not Mexican." But do you see what this is doing to us?
Absolutely. I married an American Indian.
Yeah, I know you did.
Whether we produced a daughter who married a Mexican, who's produced a granddaughter who's Hispanic, which, by the way, 1 out of 4 children in America now are Hispanic.
Yes.
So we're going to become integrated, whether the little nut jobs on the right wing like it or not. It's where the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. That's what's going to happen. The only thing is that these little racists are going to lose big time, because my granddaughter is not going to turn on me and her mother and her grandmother. You know, so we're going to get along. And these people that don't like it, well, I guess they're going to have to find another place to live, because we're not leaving and we're not changing.
Yep.
All Americans are created equal.
There you go.
So that's all I got to say, Rudy, but thank you for letting me say it.
Okay, Steve, thank you.
Wow.
But, yeah, Steve.
Opened up that can of worms tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Cliff, you and I have talked about that several times. This country is on an unfettered march toward being a brown country. Now,
that's unstoppable too. That's part of the mixing pot of America.
Yes, it is.
Should be expected.
It is unstoppable. But for some people, it is so disturbing that the power base is shifting in that direction. And so what must they do? They have to come up with all these gimmicks and ploys to get people upset, create anxiety so that they can get their votes, not by selling them on ideas, but by convincing them and making them afraid. Now, let's talk about one other thing here while we're talking on this. Has woke cost us money here in Florida? Yes. And the taxpayers are paying for it. His little personal vendetta against Disney and all of his shenanigans against drag and CRT and stopping AP classes, well, there's been countersuits. And it has been reported that the governor's lawyers who are handling these cases, and I want you to hold on to your seat, they get $1,300 an hour. $1,300 an hour. The Miami Herald reports that DeSantis has run up a legal bill of $17 million because of these woke CRT fights. Is that the way you want your tax dollars spent? Not me. There's a whole lot of things that could be done. Bringing homeowners insurance down, helping homeless, and we're spending $17 million on this woke baloney. And Brian, I hope you call back someday, because you and I need to have a serious dialogue. Now, here's another little tidbit I want you to know. Republicans added $16 million to the state budget for legal expenses to fund DeSantis's culture wars. That where you want your money to go? Again, that phone number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. Now, I don't know, when I give you the definition of woke and how it is being attacked mercilessly by our governor, I'd like for you to tell me what is wrong with that. And Brian, my friend, man of color, has kind of missed the boat for understanding the nuance of what's taking place here. But in any event, let's go on to my second topic, which I will not even be able to barely get through the first couple lines, but it's something that I've thought about and read about and done some research on for some time. Reconciling one's faith teachings with political views. Think about that. The person that first kind of brought that to my attention was Reverend Barber, who is a very famous pastor now. I think he's a visiting professor at one of the more prestigious universities. I forget where it is, might be in Louisiana. But he was a pastor in Greensboro, North Carolina. And my pastor said to me, and he and our friends, as well as I am a member of his church, he said, Rudy, sometime I wonder what Bible people are reading, because it can't be the same Bible that I'm reading, because their interpretation of the Bible is radically different than the interpretation I got in seminary. And here's an interesting point. Conservatives in this survey from this report admit to a discrepancy between when it comes to fellowship issues. Conservatives admit that they have some discrepancy when it comes to fellowship issues, such as taxation to reduce economic inequality. They don't like that, which is not consistent with what the Bible teaches us about treating the lesser of these. Liberals, on the other hand, admit to some conflict with morality issues. So each side in this report admits to having to accept and identify the weakness of their own points. Now, and with liberals is also the conflict about abortion, gay marriage. It's part of the moral issues that are conflict with them. There are those who regularly attend church tend to be more conservative. And that's what this report states. I don't agree with that. And I'm going to tell you why. You can do any research you want and you'll find out the ethnic group that is more likely to attend church on a weekly basis is African Americans. We attend church in greater numbers than any other ethnic group on a ratio basis in this country. That's a fact. So now, and I will say to you, there are some Black conservatives. We just heard one. Brian's a Black conservative. So now, religion has become linked to conservatism. Now, think about that. Religion and conservatism have become almost one and the same. I don't think that is the way God would have it, or the way that it was taught by Jesus, that's for sure. Each side is convinced the other side is treated more leniently. If you listen to conservatives, they are convinced that Obama was a devil. And the fact that he didn't have anybody in his administration convicted of any improper behavior was only because they were lenient on him, because he was an evil guy, and they can be convinced of nothing else. And that's where we start to get in trouble. It is to, now, there is pressure for each side to moderate their views. So on the liberal side, there's pressure to moderate their views on moral issues. And on the conservative side, there's pressure to moderate their views on fellowship issues. And I think that's where we really run into a problem like what we have now with these cultural wars. An unwillingness to moderate their position on issues leads to the win at all costs. As long as I win, it doesn't matter how I win, but I want to win and not have to move a muscle from the position that I think is right. Well, just think about that for a second. And I want you conservatives to think about this. If everybody thought like you thought, that I can't give because I think I'm right, if there was a war, there would never be no end to the war, because everybody would stay convinced that their position was right. But at some time, at some point, People have to sit at the table and say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's see if we can come to some reconciliation. Now, somehow, part of the mantra for conservatives is compromise is the devil's word. No compromise. Well, just imagine where we would be if there was no compromise. What would have happened to our debt ceiling if there was no compromise? Biden had to compromise and Republicans had to compromise. Let me give you a little information and wake-up call. That's called democracy. In its ugly, sometimes disjointed manner, democracy moves forward because people can come together and bridge the divide on some issues. And if I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times. I happen to believe the country is at its very best when we have issues that are resolved when conservatives and liberals can come together with an agreement. And those are oftentimes the most effective agreements to move us forward, are those agreements that can be created by compromise. But compromise is not a dirty word. And you be hard-pressed for me to think that the Lord would not want any compromise at all. And that kind of is where many conservatives like to lead you to. Here are the core values. Let's talk about the core values. For Christian liberals, it's the issues of fellowship and compassion. For Christian liberals, fellowship and compassion are very important to them. For conservatives, conventional morality. I think that's a pretty accurate description. Most of the conservatives I've had relationships with, they all pretty much adhere to that theory of conventional morality, although sometimes that can be somewhat exaggerated or disjointed, but nevertheless, that is their position, and they're certainly entitled to that position of wanting to adhere to a certain level of morality. But the important point I want you to know is that liberals have moral issues too. Morality is not adverse to African Americans. Morality is very much a part of who we are as people. And as I've said to you earlier on, when you think about the church and people praying, Lord knows, those people who were slaves prayed and prayed and prayed, and then prayed some more. And it was those prayers and those beliefs that gave them something to hold on to and hope for in the future. So there are, and there's some morality issues that cause conflict within the Black church too, believe me. But just know that each side has admitted to their own weaknesses. And part of making this whole thing work, and this experiment, this American experiment to continue, we have to continue to find ways to work together to come up with solutions. And here's another interesting, we're down to the last couple minutes, and I'll save the rest of this for next week, but I'll leave you with this other little tidbit here. Both sides admit that if Jesus was alive today, he would have different values than what they hold. That's pretty honest. The survey got people to admit that if Jesus was alive today, he would have a different set of values than what they have.
It's amazing how we impose our values on historical figures.
Yeah. This whole thing really has gotten kind of distorted, and what gets people upset, especially I can tell you in the African American community, when conservatives lay claim to religious values to the exclusion of African American people. That's not right. I could tell you almost any kid that's my age, any person my age will tell you about how they had to get up and go to church every Sunday, and they didn't have no say so, and there was no discussion. You got your ass up, you went to church, period. So, but in any event, I would like to, I thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm going to continue this topic about the conflict between our religion and our politics, because it's something that needs to be dealt with. And my Jewish brothers and sisters, it applies to you too, because some of your brothers and sisters have gone down the conservative path, which I don't understand, but nevertheless. But I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless and be safe. And remember, the name is soon to be Rudy's Health Insurance. Be safe, and I'll see you next week on Wednesday for the African American scene.
The African American scene with independent insurance agent Rudy Howard. But hey, you can get it as personalized as you want to now. Rudy's Insurance. The only Rudy that you need to talk to about insurance, I'm telling you. And archives of this show, including the callers, are archived on video on YouTube. Go to WPSLTV.com. Thanks, Rudy. Great show. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world on Google Home, Alexa, and, of course, the TuneIn app on your smartphone. 7 o'clock.